there was a bit of a squiffy turn of events this week with Mira releasing an article on an EG player. And actually, I want you to clear up this timeline for me
Yes,
because
I
you
was
did your
lost on this as well.
video.
Yeah, go on.
You did your video.
Yeah.
And then you said that there was going to be an article that was going to be released that was tied to the video.
Yeah.
And so we checked in the comments of your video, and sure enough, you linked to an article that Mira does.
Yeah.
But then Mira ends up apologizing. This is where I came into it, and
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
had to
I was
backtrack
confused
trying
by
to
this
figure out
too.
what
Yeah, go
happened,
on.
what the train of events happened. Because I show up one morning, and all of a sudden Mira's apologizing on Twitter, saying that, oh, he never meant to do this, and blah 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 blah. So can you give us a little bit of a rundown on what this whole EG fiasco was?
So here's the premise. So obviously the article itself, we can talk about in a second. It's basically what I was implying for all these months that I'd heard behind the scenes. It wasn't just that the team is bad in CSGO, which it has been for like two plus years now. It's more that like it's systemically bad because the people at the top don't know what they're doing, don't know CS. And so even when they hire someone who does, like Malik, they don't give him control. They sort of sabotage him. But the problem is again, when they would hire someone else or they would interview Kassad, they do a million people. Like essentially the short of it was just really incompetent exec and people who are in the positions of power. And so they either didn't hire the good people and wasted money on bad things, or they'd hire someone good, like handicap them completely and then sort of blame them when it didn't work, like they did with Malik initially, where they fired him and implied the performance of the team was why, even though then they kicked Stewie and brought him back in. So Malik, what happened was I decided, because they'd fucked with me separately in League of Legends, I'm going to look into it. I've heard some shady stuff about what went on the CSGO division, but I actually didn't expect to find all this stuff. I thought what I'd find is like one or two stories of like they did this or that. And the joke was similar. Every person who was commenting me, all that I would find as a source, everyone had a bad story, and it was the same people over and over again. Like it was Nicole Lapointe, the CEO, or it was this gamer doc person who's the director of performance, or it would be one of the people who was like a general manager figure, but from League of Legends, not from CSGO. It was the same names coming up again and again, and the same ways that people were getting screwed over. So the key thing was, I promised I would do a video on it because I had all the info. And in the meantime, by the way, even more info was coming, but you have to cut it off of it. You have to sort of say, this is the story, right? So this is why you notice I didn't go into too much of that silly gamer doc angle, because that could just be, that'll be its own video. Like that'll just be mainly comedy. The person who's the director of performance, because they've made like a fool of themselves about 5 times on Twitter now in a really silly way that, like, if you know anything about the game, you'd just be like, just stop tweeting. You know what you're talking about. But that's for another time. So I did the video, but then I thought, here's the interesting thing. I actually had all the info, like I promised on past episodes. I had it actually before the major. So initially I thought, well, the best way you could tie, because it's something I didn't used to do in my career, and it's actually a bit silly, which is because I used to be playing on easy mode, where everything I did just got all the hits in the universe, even if I didn't do like timing or marketing. I used to just put content out there and you go, whatever. Whereas like in the modern day, there's too many competing things. So what you have to do now is you have to make it super topical, don't you? So you don't just put out a video like EG Org sucks. What you want to do in theory is tie it to a moment when everyone's thinking, what's wrong with EG or what's good? So what I was going to do, I thought initially was, I know what I'll do. I'll drop this the day they go out of the major. Because, you know, it was a fluke sort of that they even got into the major, and then you were like, well, they're definitely not going to do anything. And they didn't, right? They go out. But what happened was, not long before the major, someone came to me with the info that then became the second part of this story, which is basically that one of the players, Hexed, one of the newer ones, stupidly years ago on Twitter, before I joined EG, had said words that people would consider slurs or racially and sexually insensitive, etc. Basically words that you're not allowed to say in the modern day would get you cancelled, right? So when I found that part, this is actually where the story took a detour, because I thought to myself, I could still drop it, by the way. In fact, in some ways, it's even more spicy, isn't it? The day you go out the major, not only is the org shit, but you've got someone in the org saying all things that your org flexes that you're totally against. But here's what I then thought in that scenario. Because of my own experiences being at Katowice when I'd said all that stuff, or even worse, just thinking of players like Hiko, who never did anything to Brazilians and had people like, I'll kill your mother. Like, I thought to myself, you know what? Even if this kid did say stupid shit, I don't want him to be trapped in Brazil and then have all the people in Brazil basically find out, like, you've said words that people might think mean you're racist against black people. Like, who wants to put someone through that? So even though, by the way, understand, I have no obligation. I can drop whatever. I'm just a journalist. I'm not fucking evil. But I thought in that moment, you know what? I think that's too harsh for that kid. Like, I can do it in a different way. So I waited, and then unfortunately, I've told you over Christmas, I was just a bit ill. So I had to wait, and then eventually I've just dropped it now. But here's the key thing. I also realized, how do you actually put that in a video in the modern day? Like, can I even show his tweet? Or does that mean like I've put hateful content into the video. So I thought, how do you actually do it? Like, do I censor it? Then people have to guess reset, So what I decided was this. Well, the news websites report all this stuff anyway. If people had said like slurs. So what I decided was, obviously, eventually I would have done it with someone like Richard if he'd have been around. I just decided I'd make it actually a way to double down on how stupid EG is, which is because EG hadn't done their due diligence. Even though you might have saw, I referenced an article from the Washington Post years ago where it's a puff piece about their CEO, and she brags exactly about the fact that they do consider your past history part of what they consider. She even brags because they'd had past incidents with different players from other games that like she implies like they vet you and check that you haven't said it. So guess what? That proves that that's not true, that this guy had said stuff. They hadn't even searched his Twitter, and then they haven't done that. And so what it shows is that they were lying, right? So I decided I'd make it funny because I released the video, and in the video I say, basically at 9 p.m. CET, and I released the video about 7:30. I'm like, at 9 p.m. CET, there'll be a story come out which will reveal who this player is. I don't say who it is in the video. And then the joke is, I just wanted them, Semler, to be, because remember, this is like on a Sunday or something. I just wanted them to be having like people getting calls and get woken up like, what? I was out last night, like, he's about to release it in half an hour. Who is it? Like Battle Station. I wanted that to happen because the joke is their org deserves this. This is just a tiny example of what a shitty org it is. Just like they're all across the board, they're idiots. Now the drama you're getting to, which then was totally unexpected, was because Richard wasn't available. One of the next most legit people, someone else at Deserto, which is Lewis Smira, who used to work for HLTV.org. So he wrote the story. Now this is where even I got confused because the way he behaved on Twitter was a very, very weird bit. What happened was he put the story out as normal. Remember, Deserto does the most ridiculously low-hanging fruit trash clickbait. The joke is they're like the website version of live stream fails half the time. We all know that's how they make their money. Everyone
Twitter
does.
Feed, man. It's just like I had to unfollow him.
So to me, the idea that they wouldn't cover this story is like, what? Of course they would. Like, even if Mira doesn't want to, you'd not think so much. So what happened was he put the story out, but here's the problem. Here's what you might not know, Semler. Now, look, this is exactly why it turns out he deleted the tweet, not the article, the tweet. I was even confused about that. What happened was he put the tweet out and this is why Mira himself's fucking naive. Someone just did an advanced search on Mira's Twitter and immediately found him saying one of those words. In his case, by the way, in like 2017, not even like when he's 15.
That long ago.
Yeah, I'm going to guess he was like 25 then or something. Like, give me a break. So he'd actually been saying it on Twitter. Yeah, true. Not in a racial context. I believe he said it to a friend of his, and he tried to say
a friend from what it
he tried to say it like it. Remember, also Mira is from Portugal. He's not like he is American. So. But with all that said, obviously, it looks bad if you're going reporting, look, this guy said this. It's like, well, you said it. And on top of that, Semler, I can't verify this part, but someone even said, I think they'd searched his Facebook and found some other like off-color jokes or something. So here's what, as far as I know, happened. He deleted the tweet. I thought he deleted the article, which is why I was mad as he saw. It just turned out he deleted the tweet because all the replies were people like, yeah, but what about the stuff you've said? So I think it was his way to like stop the fire before it got out of control. He was like, if I delete the main tweet, they're not replying to anything, they sort of disappear, which it does in a way. But unfortunately, it made me, and he also apologized then, what's mad, to EG and to Hext, almost as though like, because he'd been shamed, it made him realize, oh yeah, maybe these things shouldn't be reported on. But the part I got confused by was, I thought he was saying he deleted the article. Like he'd just taken the whole news post down, which by the way, he didn't. But if he had have done that for real, you are not a journalist if you do that. You are like fucking, that's like 1984, man. You're just like censoring the truth. You had the truth, you published it. And then the victim's like, well, not in this case, the criminal, fuck the victim. The criminal's like, oh, how dare you? And then you spit like that. So luckily it turns out he didn't delete the article. The article's up to this day. That's why that part, it turns out, was just miscommunication because he was very vague with what he said. But yeah, what a bizarre turn of events. And spoiler, I've always said this. We've said it on this show a million times when Richard was here. If you are a pro player or anyone in esports who ever might have said any of those words, get Twitter now, open the advanced search function, put in your Twitter handle, search for all those terms. There'll be a thing like any of these words. Put in all those terms, every tweet, just delete it. Just delete it now. And by the way, if you are someone like Hext, because here's the part people didn't get, Semler, because people are truly pathetic in this day and age, they tried to spin it that like Hext was the victim because he did the tweets when he was 15. Now they're making it sound, Semler, like he's 15 now and we're doing it like, oh, it's a kid. No, he was 15 when he did the tweets. Now I never said at any point in time, ban this guy, How dare, like, I'm not that guy. People know that. I'm not about cancelling his career. My point is, it just proves that evil geniuses lie and they're hypocrites and they don't do the initiatives they claim they do to be as woke as they think they are. So to me, that was the whole thing. I'd also say, by the way, if you are a new player like a Hext, here's your mistake. Right? When you join a team like EG, you're not even a big figure. You're not a massive streamer. Your Twitter is nothing. If you have like 10K followers or whatever, just delete every tweet. I'd even just start a new fucking Twitter when you join the pro team. Why risk it? Why risk the idea that when you were 15 or 13, you said something you don't remember now because you're 19 and so much has happened since, and it was you to a school friend or whatever. Why even risk it? Just start a new account or scrub your old account. Like the old tweets are worth nothing. So I wish people would just get ahead of the problem, as it were.
Yeah, that's actually, we were having that debate this week as well, where it's just like, okay, what's the turning point? At what point do you just, and by we, I mean on my stream, we were having this kind of discussion where it's just like, at what point do you turn around and just try and do you go back and scrub everything? Do you just get rid of it all? I mean, it's like
there are people, believe it or not, this is real actually. There's a couple of nutters in esports who do every couple of months scrub their whole Twitter account. But I'll tell you the thing, Samler. You think at first, like, it works though, because remember, unless you decide to like screenshot it that first time they did it, you remember an old tweet, you can't go back and find it. It's actually quite an effective method. I'm not going to do it myself. I'm not doing anything, but
I mean, that's
I can see why they do it. If you're edgy, you can see why they do it.
Either. But the problem is just like, how do you keep ahead of the changing rules as well? Because of course, the whole point of the game is that the rules are constantly changing, and so you don't know what's going to get you censored next.
No.
And so it's at one point it's because this is the joke that I was making. Obviously, is that holy shit, is it a good thing we didn't have social media back in the 90s? Like when we were growing up, because used to be nobody gave a shit. You could say whatever the fuck you wanted. And
luckily
nobody cared.
There weren't logs back then. I mean, obviously on IRC you could log, but no one's going to have them.
Yeah, sure.
But it's way, if you could even just go and check SMS messages, everyone would be out in trouble, wouldn't they? Everyone would have said something dodgy.
Conversations, just hanging out with your mates. You're saying shit. I mean, now it's like everything's on video because everybody's got a phone, so they're always recording shit. So it's like you don't know what you're saying if you're on camera or not, and all that. It is really one of those things though that will be the major disconnect, I think, going forward. I.e., there will be our generation who are the last generation to remember what it was to grow up without a phone and without the internet, without constant supervision and access. Versus these new generations, they will have literally grown up with that from day one. In some cases, like kids like Monacy and all that, they won't know what it means to not have a phone. They'll have spent their entire lives with the internet and a phone and everything, and constant video, and everything is permanent. Just like the neuroticism we're going to deal with going forward, it's just like, oh yeah, your whole life can be, like this Hex situation where it's like you're fucking around, and years later, oh yeah, no, you have your dream job.
I'll give you an example.
You're not allowed to have that anymore.
I won't say who intentionally, even though, by the way, it is someone actually still somewhat within CS. Or if I was mean, I'd do it, but I won't. Right? Years and years ago, this will show you how different the internet was if someone's a modern day fan. Right? I'm off the top of my head, I think this was in like 2008. Do you remember back then there was like a scenario where Russia was in some kind of like a conflict? I'm going to say it's with like Georgia. I think it was with Georgia. They had like some sort of a weird conflict, like a mini war or something, right? Not unlike on a smaller scale what's going on now with Ukraine. If people don't know, before they had Chechnya and all that kind of, right? When this happened, I'm going to say it's about 2008. At the time, I remember an actual Russian pro player coming on to Western forums like ESEA, like Americans and stuff, and just arguing with people and saying like, you're wrong and that's propaganda, like Russia didn't do this and we didn't do this crime and stuff. And back then, by the way, that was just posts on a forum. There's nothing came of that. No one was like, whoa, sanction this guy. The joke now is if you just did the equivalent now, if you're Russian, it'd be the end of your career forever. Forever. Keyword forever. Like there'll be no coming back. Like, well, you'd have to do the craziest miracle forever after that, wouldn't you? And almost like betray everyone and fucking grovel forever. Like you can maybe in that sense, but like the idea is back then it was just considered like look, maybe some American thought he was an asshole or disagreed, but no one ever thought of like he can't be a pro because he said that. But in the modern day, like we're through the looking glass now, of course. Like as you say, it's the worst thing isn't just is what he said right now. It's the idea because it's on record. If it's ever wrong, retroactively you're just done. And you can't go back in time, can you?
We fucked around with that idea that, it's this kind of thing that we're thinking about now, where it's everything is academic. But you mentioning that reminds me of a conversation that I had with somebody in Russia, in Moscow, last time we were there for Epicenter, where we were having a conversation at a table. It was a group of guys, different nationalities, And but one of them was Russian, and just one of those kinds of conversations started where it was like something sparked it, and it was like, oh, but then Russia pushed here or something like that, and the Russian guy, was like absolutely not having it. He gets up and he's just like, that is bullshit, blah blah, and it turns into this mega heated debate, and and the guy storms off, and you're like, oh, okay. When you exist in online, or when you constantly exist in these online spaces, you don't really get that element of real, like it's all academic, it's all like, oh, but in this hypothetical scenario, we could be discussing this or that or other, whatever, these are all just ideas that we're discussing. Nothing, it's not really for keeps. It's nothing really mattering. But then when you actually have those kinds of conversations face to face, or there are some conversations where it's just like, no, it's not an academic thing. This is a real thing. There's skin in the game. It's a part of reality for this person. And you can't just bandy words around about it, because sure. You may get punched in the face. I mean, it's just, it may be, and all of a sudden reality comes crashing home. Whereas, maybe you were having some kind of masturbatory, mental exercise where it's like, oh, I think this or that or whatever. No, it's that again, that line where when you spend too much time on social media, I guess everything just becomes academic. Or if you spend too much time at university, everything is just academic, and everything is so sterile that when confronted with actual consequence, I mean, we can tie this back into CS:GO. It's everybody's wondering about Na'Vi right now, and I'm just sitting here going, holy, I'm amazed that they've made it this long. The whole, everybody's like, oh, Na'Vi are really dropping off. I'm like, dude, they made it a year. They made it almost exactly a year now, in one of the most divisive environments possible, high stress, high pressure environments possible. Because we're over here living online where it's like, oh, this, that, or other. Whereas these guys, it's their life, it's their family in some cases. Electronic. I mean, the word around the campfire is that he's got some issues where, he's got family in Russia. He's trying to play for Na'Vi in Ukraine. He's not in Russia. These are serious issues that are going on. It's real life all of a sudden. And so you're experiencing that disconnect where it's like, well, there's this hypothetical conflict with these hypothetical people, like with these people, they're all kind of just like figments of my imagination because it's happening through a screen. Whereas, for some people, it's a very real thing.
Why Richard always makes that point that like it isn't as simple as telling you that because you, an idiot on Twitter, want to see a tweet from like Virtus.pro saying like it's not a war, it's all like you might want that, but like the point is the reality of that just doesn't make sense for those people and what might impact their life. Richard always makes that point. It's like the joke is you're sort of saying to someone, I accept on your behalf the consequences, even though I don't know what they are, that would come from what would make me happy. But you actually wouldn't have to be the one who lives with it. You know what I mean? Like in this particular scenario, the consequences massively, unfortunately, outweigh what you might consider a nice tweet. It just doesn't make sense, I'm afraid.
In your career, in this case, this is like this has got to be
it's implied in Russia you can go to prison if you say
exactly
about the war,
and I mean, especially when there's all of this pressure to be back home and to be participating in some way, shape, or form, and yet you're over here playing you're here doing your job, you're here with your career in an incredibly high stress environment, trying to win tournaments, win titles. And you're still having to find this kind of like balance where, I mean, it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare situation. And so all I can say is I'm amazed they made it this far, considering the level of fame those players have in that region. I mean, Simple, Electronic. I mean, these guys are superstars. So we don't even know the level of pressure that they're exposed to just on social media, et cetera. They must be not even touching social media at this point just to maintain their sanity, to have a chance to focus on the game itself, because otherwise, I mean, dude, just the deluge that they must be getting on a day-to-day basis has got to be nuts.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.